Which Mandela effect freaks you out the most and why? Just had one personally. Went to a mall where there was supposedly a gym, asked around, and nobody worked at the mall that knew what I was talking about. Looked around and couldn't find it. Came back a few months later and it was right in front of my face. You'd have to be strung out not to notice it. I don't know how or when it just appeared, but it freaked me out. Maybe you were dreaming the first time around. That the fruit of the Loom logo never had a cornucopia. What's crazy about that is that someone emailed the creator of the logo about it, and he said even he remembers it having one. This is how I remember it looking. I swear the first pair of tidy whities I've ever had back in the 80s had this cornucopia. And it's to this day the Mandela effect that actually bothers me. The Bernstein Bears one doesn't really bother me because as a kid I had issues for a few years pronouncing it and remember the stain part. I always thought that they were Bernstein Bears because my mom would always say Stein was a Jewish name, so as a child I thought they were Jewish bears. My grandma is Jewish, so they always like to point out when they could tell who's Jew or not for whatever reason. I think someone has a picture of VHS tapes with both spellings. I screenshot it to use as evidence when people bring it up. Wait, what? How is that not real? How can we all have the same mental image? Where did it all come from? The CIA, baby, the CIA. Actually, he emailed the Fruit of the Loom album cover artist, and the artist said that the logo he referenced had the cornucopia. The artist is a pretty old guy, so the son acted as a middleman since his dad doesn't really go on the internet. The artist basically told him, of course, it had a cornucopia on the album art. It's a direct spoof. I wouldn't have drawn it that way if it wasn't there. Holy shit, the plot thickens. Hold up. Are you trying to say that it never had a cornucopia? I've got a pair of transformer underwear from 1986 that says otherwise. I just went and found them in my old keepsake, and it doesn't have one. What the fuck? Mr. Monopoly's monocle. It's because Mr. Peanut has the same top hat and a monocle. I'm from the UK and we don't have Mr. Peanut here. It's because of the Pringles man, perhaps? Fuck, I just looked up the Pringles man and he doesn't have a monocles either. What the fuck is happening? Why the fuck wouldn't it be for breeze? Breeze. It's a word that means very mild wind. It makes sense to have it for a scented spray. The fuck is breeze? That's not a word. I'm out. This world isn't real. I Mandela affected my whole family once. Years ago, there was a football player on a rival team that always did dumb celebrations after he got a sack, and my family and I always hated it. One night after he did it, the family started trashing the celebration, and I said as a joke, we're all going to feel terrible when we find out he's doing the celebration as a request from a Make a Wish kid. Fast forward to a few years later, our team is playing the team again. The player got sacked and he did the celebration. I rolled my eyes and said, I hate this celebration so much. My mom instantly turned and said, don't say that. He's doing it for a sick kid. I actually like it. So I was like, what? There is no sick kid. My whole family then proceeded to argue with me. They all vividly remember reading articles about it, seeing special report segments before the game about it, and other information. Some of them even thought they knew the disease the kid had, and even extra details about why the kid chose that specific celebration. They all had these shared memories that they were sure were true. I was floored by all of this and insisted that none of it was true, so we looked it up. Not true. No kid like that ever existed. They still have trouble wrapping their heads around this one. Turned out human memory is not near reliable as we think. It was American football, and the player was Jared Allen of the Minnesota Vikings, and his cattle rump sacking celebration. This was maybe 10 years ago. My dad is friends with the local police chief. The police chief teaches him some type of course police training. I think it's high school kids. He had my dad walk in one day in the middle of the lesson, take the chief's bag, and walk out. The police chief then had a class describe the thief who stole his bag. They said he was Hispanic, wearing different clothes than he actually wore. The class was shocked that my dad walked in, nothing like they described, even though they saw him 10 to 15 minutes ago. The whole point of the lesson was eyewitnesses suck and not to rely on eyewitnesses while out on the field. Clarification. I had a psych professor do the similar thing. Had an assistant come in and hand him some papers. Right after he left, He asked the class if they could remember what color her glasses were. Red, green, and blue were all suggested. She wasn't wearing glasses. Not only do eyewitnesses suck, they are easily manipulated if you know how to ask the right questions. I watched a documentary once explaining why eyewitness testimony is unreliable. They used a case from New York City where a man was wrongly convicted and spent like 10 years in prison until the right guy was convicted. The eyewitnesses had seen the guy being talked to by the cops and even placed in the police car. Then at the lineup, they all picked him out. He didn't even look like the actual person, and his description didn't match what the witnesses originally said. But seeing him with the police altered their perception. I learned about this in the psychology of learning. I'm sure you're familiar with false memories by now. The example that they use to teach us is asking kids if they met Daffy Duck at Disneyland when they were kids. Most people said no. They come back several months or years later and ask the same question, and the vast majority of people swore up and down they met Daffy Duck at Disneyland when they were kids. Even when they were informed that Daffy was never a Disney character, the majority were even able to remember details like what they were wearing and who they were with. It's really fascinating if you can plant obscure, plausible references to something in people's mind. You can actually encourage their brains to subconsciously fill in details. Our brains are really good at that, which is why it's so easy to do. My wife and I sometimes plant false memories as pranks on each other. We don't do it often, though, because it tends to cause fights. I have a personal one that to this day, a decade later, still fucking destroys my mind. I had an oldish 2001 Dodge Neon with black seats. I drove this car for years, like 80,000 miles, all through college. I took work breaks in my car, commuted hours every day total to college, and then the opposite directions to work and back. I even lived out of this thing on several occasions. The day I go and trade it in, I'm pulling miscellaneous things out of my car at the dealer, and the seats are green. Not even a little. They are unmistakably green. In my black neon with black interior, I've always had black seats. My girlfriend then, wife now, goes, "Oh, they've always been green." Except they fucking weren't. Don't lie to me. This is still upsetting me to this day. Life is a lie and nothing is real. The issue with him probably is he's colorblind, and maybe when he was cleaning the stuff out, the door was open and the sun was hitting it and he could see it. But yeah, look it up. A lot of men are colorblind. Similar story. I have a friend who moved away when we were young. 15 years later, he came back to the small town, and people were shocked to see him, like truly shocked. They have collectively remembered that he drowned in a river. People remember reading newspaper articles about it, seeing it in the news, etc. Spooky stuff. I've seen a similar situation as which I could explain what happened with your friend. I'm a nurse. For years, we saw a patient every couple weeks like clockwork due to her chronic illness. Her name was fairly generic. I'll call her Jane Smith. All of a sudden, Jane didn't come back to the hospital for months. Then someone found this news article where Jane Smith had been killed by her husband, who had then killed himself. It was the town that our Jane lived in, so obviously it was her, right? A couple months later, John Smith is admitted to the hospital again, and we are all shocked to tell her we all thought she was dead. She said, "Yeah, I've been getting that a lot. It was a different Jane Smith in my town. It could be that some other kid drowned in the river at the same time your friend moved. People remember the news story, and then your friend was gone, so they added those pieces together." And it's funny how the CIA is capable of removing things off the internet, but we are not, because I remember there was a commercial, but they always had the fruit like as people, like the people who would dress up in fruit costumes. And there was also one of the commercials where there was a cornucopia guy. So I don't know how it's impossible to find like the commercials or images of them. I know this one was a bit of a weird one, but I was just curious as what people had to say about Mandela effects. And it pretty much was the same. Like, people's memories are wrong and collective. But I also do believe in the CIA, and they do experiments of all kinds. They never stop. They are full in force, and they continue to do these things all the time. This is what they do. They conduct experiments, and they do it secretly. If you made it to the end, thank you so much. Y'all have a good rest of y'all day. God bless. And If you could think of any Mandela effects that are not popular or even your own stories, put them in the comments below. I would love to hear. Okay, bye.